After the others had walked away in the steady rain, Ford, Stan, Mabel, Wendy, and Dipper huddled. "Stanley," Ford said, "I've got a very important job for you. Will you promise to do it, no questions asked?" "What do you mean, no questions asked?" Ford raised his glasses and rubbed his eyes. "Well, like that one, for instance. Look, I'm serious. I need you to stand guard. If this works, a space pod, a silvery orb about 30 feet in diameter, is going to come speeding right up to the cave entrance. If we're lucky, it can trap the creature. Then when the orb leaves, it's going to create a terrific shockwave that would be dangerous for anyone too near it. I want you to go out of the cave, walk about 100 yards into Creepy Hollow, and just wait. Don't approach the cave while the orb is hovering in front of it, and if any of our friends, anybody else, really, even including the gnomes, comes out into the hollow, warn them away. Their lives depend on it." "Send Dipper," Stan said. "No good," Ford replied. "Dipper, I'm sorry, but this is a tough job and may call for muscle. You're the only one who can do it, Stanley. Please, I need you." Stan gave him a lopsided grin. "I don't like it. But since you said please, okay, I'll do it." "Right," Ford said. "Now, this is going to be unpleasant, I know, but once the orb arrives, you lie flat, yes, on your belly in the mud. Stay that way until it leaves and the shockwave passes over you. Press your hands over your ears. It'll help if you keep your mouth open, too. You'll know when the wave has passed, and then you can stand up again. We'll be out as soon as the orb has gone." Stanley shook his head. "I'll do it, but you and the kids get your butts out as soon as you can, or else I'm gonna come in after ya, and I'll punch anything that moves." "Will do." "Thank you, Stanley." Stan rubbed his nose, about the size and nearly the color of a ripe strawberry. "I still can't get used to hearing you say those words. Good luck, bro. Hurry. I'll give you 10 minutes to get to your station, starting now." Stanley paused just long enough to hug Mabel and Dipper. "You take care of this egghead, kids. He's got brains, but you knuckleheads have better sense." He turned and hustled away. Ford had clicked a stopwatch app on his phone. "All right. Wendy, you take this light. I've adjusted it to extreme illumination. It's brighter than 150,000 lux, that's 1.5 times the intensity of sunlight near the equator during an equinox. You have to keep the beam aimed at the creature, no matter how it moves. Since it fears light, I think you can keep it pinned down until the orb gets here. Then the alien craft will send in a transport beam to pull the specimen aboard. We have to get out of the way so we won't be swept up, too. You'll know when it starts. When it does, like Stanley, you all have to fall flat. Understand?" They nodded. "Very well. I'm going to begin removing the stones," Ford said. "Wendy, turn on the light." Even though the beam was aimed away from them, they had to squint in the sudden brilliance. Ford shielded his eyes until he could turn his back on the flashlight. Then he knelt by the pile of stones and began to shift them. "Grunkle Ford, no!" Mabel wailed. "You can't be so close. You'll be caught in the transport thingy." "I have to take that chance," Ford said. He moved a boulder the size of a bowling ball, and they heard the creature inside the cavity skittering as a lance of light struck it. "You stay back." "No." Mabel ran to him, her shadow on the stones seeming to rush to meet her. "You haven't touched it." "I have." "Grunkle Ford, it's not evil. It's just sad, it's so sad." "What?" Dipper came up and took Mabel's hand. "Come on, Mabel," he said, tugging her. "Let Ford take care of this." "You don't understand." In the fierce glare of light, tears glistened on her cheeks. "It wants emotions because it's lonely. It's the only one of its kind in the whole world. And it's been in this cave for millions of years, in the dark, all alone. Mabel, Dipper said, it could kill us all. You don't know. You didn't touch it. She pulled away from Dipper, fell to her knees, and held her hand out to the small opening Ford had made. I'm here, she said. I know you don't understand words, but I'm here. A quivering gray tentacle as small in diameter as a pencil appeared, questing left and right. Mabel closed her hand on it. Guys, she whispered, put your hands on mine. Feel it. Dipper hesitated, but put his palm over Mabel's hand. Grunkle Ford cupped his big hand beneath hers. And, from the journals of Dipper pines, and we felt its terrible loneliness, its ache and its sorrow. It was not of our world. It didn't understand us except as the only good source of the food it needed. Somehow we all got mental flashes of its existence, of its life cycle. It had begun as a microscopic thing, spending 1,000,000 years preying on tiny alien life forms. Then when strangers from another world explored its home planet, the creature had been captured, and later on it had survived the crash of the spaceship on our world. From the wrecked ship it had escaped and had found the cave smaller than, millennia ago, but the creature was small, too. It crept into the sheltering darkness and lured prey, earth creatures that could feel very little, only a yearning to live and a fear of pain. Then millions more years passed, the creature growing less than a micron a year, as it was able to find larger and more complex creatures whose emotions it could absorb. And finally, a few thousand years ago, it trapped its first human. It did not kill any of the creatures it kept and fed off, really, it nourished them, too, with the same secretions that fed the butterflies, keeping its captives alive and healing any diseases or wounds so they would continue to live and to feel and to feed it. Creepy Hollow is really the creature's protective shell, like that of an oyster, a projection of pure fear, stored from all of its victims over all the millions of years that it sends out to buffer itself from any meaningful threat. Only those marked with the triangle symbol, or those like McGucket or the clones, whose feelings are on a different plane, are immune. By making other creatures afraid to approach, the alien creature can maintain its host human and feast on that human's feelings. But humans wear out. After decades of having their emotions drained, their feelings become dull. Then the centivore, as Grunkle Ford calls it, sends out the butterflies to find new prospects. Generally the old one, released from the centivore's hold, simply lays down and starves to death, too worn out even to care about living or dying. That's why the butterfly's cycle is once every 30 years or so. When one human host wears out, the centivore encourages the butterflies to multiply and go hunting for a replacement. If Mabel had remained trapped, in 30 years she would be as listless and unfeeling as, well, as Mrs. McGucket. And the centivore would toss her aside and seek stronger food. But we learned, or we felt, that it didn't intend to hurt us. It didn't know or understand what we are and didn't even realize we were as sentient as it is. It really wants what every living thing wants, to survive. Just to survive. Only now, only after feeling the bombardment of emotions it triggered in the others by killing Dipper 4, does the centivore dimly realize that we are more than animals. And now it fears us. And as we held hands, we felt it wonder at Mabel, whose emotions are so real and so deep that as it absorbs them, it has begun to change. I'm not sure, I can't ever be sure, but I think my crazy, goofy, silly, wonderful sister has taught this alien thing how to feel something new, something like mercy, something like compassion. Something very much like love. We mean you no harm, Grunkle Ford whispered. We want to send you home. Home, Mabel said, her voice breaking. Home. We hope you understand that, Dipper said, feeling how his sister's hand trembled. The tentacle reluctantly pulled away from Mabel's grasp and slowly withdrew into the dark crevice. Mabel stood. It's okay now, Grunkle Ford. You can move the stones away now. It won't hurt us. Mabel, are you sure? Wendy asked. She held the light in one hand, and her axe in the other. Dipper went to stand beside her. I felt it too, he told her. Yeah, we're sure. Ford bowed his head for a moment. Then he said, Wendy, there's a dial on the butt of the flashlight. Turn it counterclockwise until I tell you to stop. She sheathed her axe. Okay, man. I hope you know what you're doing. I think I do. The light began to dim. Another turn. Another one. One more. Stop. Then the flashlight's glow was barely as bright as a candle flame. Wendy argued, if it attacks, we can't see it well enough to fight back. It won't attack. Ford pulled away all of the rocks, then held out his hand. Here we are. Come on, we won't hurt you. Trust us. Dipper couldn't see much of what was happening, but he knew the creature briefly slipped a tentacle against Ford's six-fingered palm. Then it was slowly pouring itself out of the small hollow where it had been coiled. He heard Ford say, yes, yes. Home. Home. I'll call for your transport now. Ford stood and turned away from the creature before fiddling with the keychain fob. For a second it glowed blue. Ford edged away from the jointed, indistinct sprawl of the centivore. Kids, get back against the walls. The orb just launched. It'll be here in, Dipper grimaced as a high-pitched screech made the stones of the cavern vibrate. Correction, Ford said. It's already here. Now I'm identifying the centivore as the target. If this works, if I'm right, yes. A pulsating beam, not quite green, not quite purple, throbbed into existence. It enveloped the centivore, and then the creature vanished. Down! Ford yelled. Hands over your ears. Mouths open. Dipper hit the stone floor hard. A second later he felt as if a giant fist had pounded him. Air whooshed out of his lungs, and the whole world shuddered. An explosion too loud to really hear blasted through the cavern. In the darkness toward the mouth of the cave things crashed and splintered. Then there remained only a throbbing in their heads. Ford got up, helped Wendy to her feet, and turned the flashlight back to a bright glow. Everyone okay? He had to say it again, shouting at the top of his lungs to break through the ringing in their ears. They all nodded and then they stumbled out. In the main cavern stalactites had fallen and had shattered into gleaming shards of stone. A cloud of fine dust still floated in the air, making the flashlight beam seem as solid as the rock around them. They stumbled to the mouth of the Gag of Doom and saw mud-coated Stanley Pines running toward them, splashing and stumbling. He skidded to a sloppy halt as they nearly tumbled down the slope to meet him. Hey, I'm glad to see you. Stan yelled. Ford cupped his hand behind his ear. Say again? Instead of speaking, Stan hugged his brother tight. Ford protested, Stanley, please. You're all muddy. Spread it around, I say. Stan yelled back. He reached with a goopy hand to ruffle Mabel's hair, smear the back of Dipper's neck, and even brush war paint strips on Wendy's cheeks. Now you look like a warrior. She grinned and used her finger to remove a streak of mud right down the center of his bumpy orange-red nose. Thanks, you old codger. The rain had become a miserable, cold, steady drizzle. Mabel was limping, and Grunkle Stan picked her up, ignoring her protests. You can't walk through this sludge barefoot, he told her. Pumpkin, next time you run away from home, for Pete's sake put on your shoes first. They slobbed through the mess, nearly losing their own shoes in the sucking, clinging muck, but now Creepy Hollow was just a scraggly, dismal, overgrown patch of soggy, empty ground with no fearsome phantoms to haunt it. At last they reached firmer ground and the forest, and Jeff the gnome melted out of the underbrush. Is it gone? It's gone, Dipper said. Hey, man, thanks Schmebulok for us. And thanks to all you guys for helping Dipper 3 and Dipper 4 understand what we were up against. You killed it? Jeff asked. Send it so far away it can never come back, Mabel told him. Good. How about the other Dippers? We like them. Where are they? Dipper shook his head. They won't be back. Jeff looked hard at him, and then his small face writhed into a mask of sorrow. Oh. I see. He wiped his eyes. We'll have a memory feast for them tonight. It's not much, I know, not nearly enough, but... well, it means something to us gnomes. Mabel reached for his small hand and squeezed it. It means a lot to us, too, she whispered. Thank you. With a sniffle, Jeff said, oh, I'm supposed to tell you the big guy is waiting for you. He took the others away in the car and then he drove back alone. You can find him at the ruins of the old house. His shoulders drooped. I'll go and tell the others about the other dippers. We're all sorry. So are we, Ford said. So are we. From the Journals of Dipper Pines, Wednesday, June 26th, it seems like way more than a week and a half has already gone by. I missed writing for a couple of days, so I need to catch up. On Monday Mabel wasn't feeling well. We were down in the gift shop, trying to keep Waddles from breaking into the vending machine, and when we finally got him outside, Mabel was laughing and playing with him when suddenly she doubled over, clutching her middle. I helped her inside and told Wendy to call a doctor, quick. Wendy asked a couple of questions and then said, chill, dude, I got this. Dipper, watch the register. You come with me, Mabes. So for half an hour I sold junk to tourists and wondered if Mabel had some kind of infection or some lingering effect from the centivores feeding on her emotions. Then Wendy sauntered back in, shot me a grin and a thumbs up, and I gave her the cashier's seat back again. Is Mabel okay? I asked. She's fine, man. But what's wrong with her? Wendy sighed. I don't know that I'd call it anything wrong. She's 13, Dipper. Her body's changin'. You do know about stuff like that, right? Stuff like, oh. With a shrug, Wendy said, yeah, oh. First time can be painful and scary. Dipper, dude, let me warn ya, from now on, maybe for a few days every month, Mabel may not be her usual self. She'll probably be kinda cranky, but she won't mean anything by it, so ride it out. Happens to all girls. She chuckled. Hey, you remember last summer when I broke up with Robbie and you and Stan offered to give me a ride and I got like all freaky and yelled, what is it with men? It was kinda gettin' to that time of the month for me, if you get my drift. She's the same Mabel, Dipper. Still your sister. But she's growin' up, man. She punched my shoulder. You're blushin', dude. It's natural. Get over it. I'll try, but later Melody said she thought Mabel might be more comfortable sleeping downstairs in the new guest room that Seuss added on back in the spring. Mabel looked kind of embarrassed, but I told her it was all right. We'd still see each other all the time, only now it would be like home in Piedmont, where we each have our own rooms. Anyway, Mabel went to lie down, which is not like her in the middle of the day, and I hung around in the gift shop with Wendy. When she had a break, we went up onto the roof. I sat on the edge with my legs dangling over, and she stretched out in the lawn chair. You still bummed about Mabel? She asked me quietly. Yeah. No. I don't know. I sighed and thought, well, if I can't tell Wendy, who can I tell? So I blurted out, it's everything that happened. It started out when I wanted to be a detective and track down Mrs. McGucket so Fiddleford would cheer up. But look at how it turned out. Mabel got captured by a monster and could have been killed. I put everybody in danger when they went to rescue her, and my copies and Grunkle Ford had to step in and bail me out. And my copies died. I never wanted that. I just wanted to help, but I screwed it all up. Wendy laughed and said, you're kidding me, right? Come on, dude. Think about it, you started this whole thing, did you? Really, Dip? Think about it. How many years have the police totally failed to, solve the case? And you and Mabel tracked down Mayellen McGucket in just a few days, man. So what if you had help? You think we resented doing that? Come on, you're smarter than that. You know that's what friends are all about, right? I rubbed the back of my neck. I guess. With a gentle smile, Wendy said, something else, dude. Dipper 4 gave his life for Mabel and the rest of us. He was a copy of you, Dip. Which means that he wouldn't have done that if you weren't willing to do the same thing. You're not a failure, man. You're one of the good guys. One of the best. I thought about that. It helped at least a little. Thanks, Wendy. Hey, look, here comes Grunkle Stan's car. We went back down and learned that Grunkle Stan had driven Fiddleford and Mayellen McGucket over. They all came in, and while Fiddleford and his wife chatted in the parlor with Seuss and Melody, Grunkle Stan stayed in the gift shop and shot the breeze, that's what he called it, with a busload of tourists. I think Stan must have turned on that weird annoying charm of his because I kept hearing the cash register ding as Wendy made sale after sale. Seuss looked really happy. Mabel heard us talking and came out and gave Fiddleford and Mayellen a hug. Fiddleford told us that Mayellen was beginning to feel just a little tiny bit more like herself. We're going to the lake, he said quietly. I think that'll help her. Course it might not be the best thing for her. But I gotta take the chance. Would you kids please come with us? Sure, Mabel said at once. Just let me get my grappling hook. Mabel! I said. Why would you need that? You never can tell, bro, she shot back. Grappling hook. Still, I could tell she wasn't feeling all that well. Stan said he'd hang around the shack, so Fiddleford took the keys of the El Diablo and drove his wife and Mabel and me to the lake. I sat beside Mabel in the back seat, where every once in a while she made a face from the discomfort she still had. I told her Wendy had explained what was going on. How do you feel about it? I asked. She shook her head. Scared. Worried about what will happen next. Sad that we can't share the attic. We can share our lives, I told her. That's better than the attic. She punched my arm. You've been taking BS lessons from Grunkle Stan. I could do worse, I said, and I put my arm over her shoulder. She leaned against me and whispered, thanks for understanding. At the lake, well, I can't write very much about what happened at the lake. Maybe Mabel could, she's the one who knows all about feelings, but I feel sort of strange about it all. I don't mean what happened was bad, though. It was good. It was good. Fiddleford led Mayellen into the ranger station, and when Tate McGucket turned around, he first saw Fiddleford and started in an angry voice, Dad. Son, Fiddleford said firmly, looky here. I found her. I've finally brought your mama back to you. Tate's mouth hung open. Mom? Mother? Mama! They all three hugged. Then when they stepped apart, Mrs. McGucket put her hand on Tate's cheek and just stared up at him. He's a head taller than she is. She whispered, my little boy. Oh, my little son. You're a fine man now. And a tear ran from her eye. Mabel tugged my sleeve. Let's go now. We hung the closed sign on the door and stood guard outside to protect their privacy. Mabel had her grappling hook ready, and nobody came toward us. By now I guess most people in town know not to mess with Mabel. But both of us knew what was going on. Mrs. McGucket is really starting to feel emotions again. And I think the family may just be okay. When they all came out, they kept hugging, and Tate said, I'm off duty on Sunday. You come to the lake. We'll do some catching up and have a good time. Can I bring my raccoon? Fiddleford asked in his hick voice. I wasn't sure if he was seriously insane again, but he caught my puzzled look and gave me a wink. Sure, Tate said. He was grinning. Fine fiddle music. Fiddleford exclaimed, doing a little jig. It's a deal. Save her an inner tube. She loves Flowatin. And Mayellen McGucket actually laughed. Just a chuckle, but Mabel reached over and squeezed my hand and gave me a big, wide grin. Yes, I think the McGuckets are going to be all right. Tuesday Mabel stayed mostly inside because she was still uncomfortable. This morning, though, she challenged me to a pancake eating contest. She won. She always wins eating contests. But then Seuss sat down at the table and broke her record with his first helping. And meanwhile, something mysterious is going on. I don't know what, but everybody's being secretive. Finally Melody told me I'd find out soon enough. I just have to wait until Friday evening, she says. Gravity Falls. Always another mystery. In the cool of early Friday evening, Seuss let a blindfolded Mabel out of the shack, and Wendy did the same for a blindfolded Dipper. Seuss! Mabel complained, "Where are we going?" "We're already there, Hambone," Seuss said cheerfully. "Okay, dudes, take him off." Dipper reached to untie the bandana that covered his eyes. He blinked at almost everybody in town. They all stood grinning on the lawn of the Mystery Shack, from both great-uncles to Fiddleford and Mayellen to Grenda and Candy to Sheriff Blubbs and Deputy Durland to Lazy Susan, Bodacious T determined to Chandra Jimenez and Mayor Cute Biker, everybody, Gideon Gleeful and his parents, Robbie and Tambry, they were kissing. She had her arms around his neck and was texting behind his back, and Lee, Nate and Thompson. Thompson! And all the others, Manly Dan and his 3 boys, Mr. Pulchek, doing one-armed push-ups with a smiling Tad Strange sitting on his shoulders, all the others. Even Pacifica Northwest, though her parents were nowhere to be seen. And hanging from the totem pole all the way to the shack was a gigantic, colorful banner, "Welcome back Dipper and Mabel." "It's totally a party, dudes," Seuss said. "A celebration just for you. Melody's made some scrumptious snacks, we got lots of soft drinks, and I'm gonna DJ." "All right," Dipper said, giving the big guy a high five. And then everyone crowded all around, laughing, high-fiving and talking a mile a minute. A little later the music began. As couples started the first slow dance, Wendy made her way to Dipper. "Hey, man," she said, "I love this song." Dipper rubbed his elbow and smiled awkwardly. "If only I was any good at talking about how I feel. If only I was more like Mabel." He swallowed hard, straightened up, and said, "Yeah. I don't suppose, I really can't do it, I don't know how, but, would you like to dance?" "Dude, I thought you'd never ask me." She reached for his hand. "This hand goes in the small of my back, and keep it right here, okay? And with this hand you hold mine, and I put my other one on your shoulder. Now just listen to the music and move to the beat." If there were other dancers around, Dipper didn't notice them. If he took awkward steps and sometimes bumped toes with Wendy, she didn't complain. He let the music flow through him and soon it began to feel natural, to feel right. She was warm in his arms, and she smelled wonderful, not floral, but like a forest in high spring. However, as they danced, he thought, this isn't what I imagined it would be like at all. It's way better. Only when the music ended and they broke apart did he notice that Mabel was cheerleading for him and her 2 friends were joining in. He said, "Aw, Mabel. Cut it out." "S okay, man," Wendy said, laughing. "Let the girls have their fun." "Hey, Dipper, seriously, I liked that dance. Can we do it again? I think I can learn to be better." "Sure, Dip, only later, not right now," Wendy said. She leaned to kiss his cheek and went on softly, "Dude, I'll level with you. I think we just possibly maybe startin' something here. But let's keep our cool and just let it just develop naturally, okay? Not try to rush it? We have time." "Yeah," Dipper said, melting inside. "We have time. But right now look over there by the drinks table," Wendy said. "See Pacifica? She's all dressed up, Dipper. She even wore a dress, man. Lake foam green. She looks so pretty, but also pretty lonesome, just standing all by herself. And so far nobody's danced with her. What are you suggesting? Wendy said, well, I'm gonna go have a pits and maybe hang with my friends for a little while. I'll catch you later. But think about it, Dip. You know what it's like to have a crush on somebody and not have the guts to tell her, right? Yeah, but I don't feel that way about Pacifica. That's not what I meant. Get a clue, dude. Wendy raised her eyebrows and made a familiar gesture, sealing her lips and flicking away the key. Dipper started to ask, what do you mean? Then light dawned. You mean, Pacifica? You mean me? Wendy shrugged, smiled, and walked away. For a moment Dipper tried to sort out his feelings. But if Wendy was going to hang with kids her age, and Mabel had Grenda and Candy, and if Wendy was cool with the idea, I may have to rethink everything. He wound his way through the crowd. Hey, Pacifica. Oh, hi. She sniffed. I didn't realize there'd be such a mob here. I just wanted to drop by long enough to welcome you both back. I probably should just say a quick hello to Mabel and then go. Oh, Dipper said. I thought you might want to dance. For a moment Pacifica's blue eyes were wide and surprised-looking. Then she smiled, a surprisingly timid and shy smile. Well, this is kind of a nice song. I guess that would be all right. Dipper took a deep breath. Be patient with me. I'm just starting to learn. Now, my arm goes around your waist, he said. And we hold hands like this. The gnomes usually scurried, red-hatted squirrels zipping across a hot blacktop highway. Or they slunk, so quiet you'd never know they were around until they stole your picnic. Gnomes never, ever marched. Except on high occasions. Coronations. The birth of a new gnome. Funerals. And gnomes rarely ever made much sound. Some of them could speak human. Jeff, the Queen's interpreter, was best at it. He knew well more than 12 words. Gnomes, by the way, are rotten at counting, too. They know how many of them live in the civilized colony, 1,000. Exactly. Except if a human census taker happened by and was interested in an accurate count, 1,000 in Gnomish turns out to mean a whole bunch of us. It could be 500 by human count, or 30,000. On that summer afternoon, they don't number their days or name their months, being Gnomish, but basically designate time as the day that was, the day that will be, and maybe another day, who knows? The old queen died the day that was, more than a year earlier, eaten by a badger. The new queen, the same badger, had been crowned the day that was. If they needed more clarity, it would be the day that was when the badger ate the queen and the day that was when the badger that ate the queen became the new queen. It gets complicated. Where was I? On that summer afternoon, a train of gnomes 10 wide and certainly hundreds long marched, 3 times around the circumference of their domain, Gnome Man's Land. They sang as they marched. Well, for a certain value of sang. It was throat singing, oddly deep and twangy for their size. They sounded like a colony of disgruntled bees complaining about poor nectar conditions in the clover. Not all the civilized gnomes marched. The police force lined the route to keep the procession orderly and to protect it against any outside threats. Granted, all the other civilized gnomes were actually in the procession, but on the odd chance that one was missing and meant mischief, the police gnomes lined the route. Except there weren't that many of them, so they were spread out, about 1 gnome every mile as a protective force. They could offer all the resistance of a facial tissue in a blast furnace. Round they went 3 times, ending up in a great clearing, under the sky. Stars were already shining above them. The gnomes had once been a subterranean race. Their myths said the sky was a dome of anthracite coal far overhead, with diamonds stuck in it, and those were the stars. If you asked a gnome why the dome wasn't visible in the daytime, he or she would very patiently explain, "Shut up. Jeff, the the queen's interpreter, and the queen herself led the march and took their places in the center as the others slowly coiled in and formed a broad circle around them. The mood seemed solemn, but gnomes never take off their red hats, even if those are hats and not just part of the gnomish anatomy. If you ask a gnome, you get pretty much the same explanation as the one about the dome of the sky and the diamonds that are stars. When every gnome was present, they all fell silent as Jeff spoke. You all know why we mourn. Last winter we met Dipper 3 and Dipper 4, who told us they were copies of Dipper Pines. You all remember him and his sister Mabel. She was almost our queen, but she fought us off with an anti-gnome cannon. Do we hate her for that? All the others, except the badger, who had curled up for a nap, said in unison, no. We honor her. Honor to the queen who got away. That's right, Jeff said. Whose fault was it that she did not become our queen? It was our fault that she did not become our queen. We were not worthy enough. From the back of the crowd came faintly the last syllables of the word Schmebulok. Did we bear any ill will toward Dipper 3 and Dipper 4? No, we bore them no ill will. They were our friends. They helped us in the winter. They gave us advice on where to find unguarded human food. We honor them. Yulok. Jeff took a deep breath. His voice came out shaky. They have left us. The rain has taken them. We mourn their passing. Oh, we grieve, they all repeated in unison. Yulok. Yet we know their spirits are at rest. They died nobly, protecting their friends the humans from the monster in the Gak of Doom. Eek, all the gnomes repeated ceremonially. Yulok. They passed away as heroes, and for their friendship and their bravery and their sacrifice, we honor them. Hooray, all the gnomes chanted. Yulok. Let us eat the ceremonial jam in remembrance of our almost human friends Dipper 3 and Dipper 4. From some pocket beneath his beard, Jeff produced a little earthenware pot. He took of the lid and raised a tiny spoon. Ready! Spoon! Eat! For a few moments the sound of tiny lips smacking filled the night, attracting the attention of an owl that happened to be flying over from somewhere outside the Valley of Gravity Falls. It perched high in a giant chinkapin tree, from where it gazed down on the hundreds and hundreds of little tiny bearded men and their tiny little women, all wearing conical red hats, all digging into what looked like raspberry jam, all of them chanting in unison yum after every bite, except for one that kept saying Schmebulok, and the owl decided then and there that the roadkill it had eaten earlier must have gone bad. Though night was its usual time for hunting, and though these creatures were the right size for food, it simply tucked its head beneath its wing to sleep it off. When the jam pots had all been emptied, Jeff said, Farewell, Dipper 3 and Dipper 4. May your spirits know the freedom of the wind and the joy of the leaping fire. May they travel as smoothly as the running streams and rest as peacefully as the fallow ground in autumn. He cleared his throat, and when he spoke again, his voice had become hoarse. Our thoughts go with you, and our hope is that one day we will meet again when our own spirits go beyond where the sun rises. Many of the gnomes were gulping back tears and blowing their noses. Unfortunately, this was often on another gnome's beard. Funerals usually ended in gnome brawls, for sugar acts on them a lot like alcohol on humans or boy bands on preteen girls. However, this time something strange happened. None of them even felt like fighting. Instead, the congregation of gnomes broke up into small, weeping groups. They went back to their homes, or into the gnome taverns, and there they told tales of how the two Dipper clones had befriended them in the time of cold and scarcity. These stories tended to grow and were not strictly true, but they carried the weight of belief and affection. In time they would become a myth of the twin giants, towering benevolent beings who protected the gnomes and who were always around, invisibly. It was a comforting story, and it did a lot of good over the coming centuries. At least to gnomes. But that evening, as the others scattered, Jeff remained, head bowed, standing in the center of the clearing beside the sleeping queen and quietly weeping. He felt a hand on his shoulder and looked up. Schmebulok, said the only other gnome remaining in the clearing. Me too, old friend, Jeff said, patting him on the shoulder. My heart is hurt, too. I wish you healing. Schmebulok. Thank you, Jeff said. That means a lot to me. Excuse me, I'm sorry, but I never can remember your name. That was when the first and only punch of the evening was thrown.